For weeks, the world has been watching every development involving Iran and the US. Will diplomacy succeed? Or maybe will tension return once again? Ladies and gentlemen, now fresh confusion has emerged. US President Mr. Donald Trump announced that new negotiations with Iran would soon take place in Doha, Qatar. But within hours, Iran publicly rejected that claim, humiliating Mr. Trump. Iranian officials said that no technical negotiations were scheduled and instead that discussions could not move forward until and unless Tehran's conditions were met. This disagreement, it has raised fresh questions. Are both the nations actually talking, or are they sending different messages to different audiences here? Well, the uncertainty comes only days after military tension around the Strait of Hormuz. It raised a fear of another major regional conflict. For the global economy, every statement that matters because the Gulf region remains one of the world's most important energy corridor. Any uncertainty, it immediately affects the oil prices, financial market, shipping routes, and global trade here. Here, diplomatic experts say negotiations between rival countries, it's rarely straightforward. Public statements often differ from private conversations. Governments also use media messaging as part of a broader diplomatic strategy here. And that is why analysts believe it is too early to conclude whether talks have completely collapsed or whether negotiations are quietly continuing behind the closed doors. Ladies and gentlemen, one thing is definitely certain here. Let me help you out. The relationship between Washington and Tehran, that remains one of the most closely watched geopolitical stories in the world tonight. Not every criminal uses weapons. Some use promises. For years, this guy, he represented himself as a businessman, a political activist, and a voice against China's government. Thousands trusted him. Many invested their life savings. But according to an American court, it was all part of a massive fraud. Chinese businessman Mr. Miles Guo, also known as Guo Wenyi, he has been sentenced to 30 years in the US federal prison after being convicted of defrauding investors of nearly $1 billion. Prosecutors say that he used investors' money to fund an extravagant lifestyle that includes luxury property, expensive cars, and super yacht instead of project that he had promised for. Can you imagine losing your retirement saving because you believed somebody who claimed to be fighting for democracy here? Well, that is exactly what prosecutors said had happened to many people in the United States. In fact, many victims reportedly invested after believing Guo's promises of financial opportunity and political reform. Instead, investigators alleged the money was diverted into personal luxury. Well, the court ordered Guo to forfeit hundreds of millions of dollars in illegal gains in addition to serving his prison sentence. Even after the verdict, Guo continues maintaining his innocence and plans to appeal here. This particular case once again reminds us that financial fraud, it is becoming increasingly sophisticated. Today's scammers, they no longer rely on phone calls or maybe fake emails. Some build powerful online personalities, some attract political support, others create investment platforms that appear completely legitimate. And that is why financial experts repeatedly advise investors to verify every opportunity before investing their hard-earned money. Because once the money disappears, recovering it can become almost impossible.